Hey folks, Jim Gaffigan here back with another hilarious stand-up set. Today we're taking a look at some lyrics from Fall Out Boy. This is The Carpal Tunnel of Love, which, funny title, never heard of the song. I'm not a huge Fall Out Boy fan, maybe I'll talk more about that in a second. This was submitted by someone by the name of Gyunsu, so thank you for sending this my way. I think it's always a fun opportunity to analyze, some published work, as it were. This is a little different, of course, but again, we'll talk about it. Um, no content warning listed. Gyunsu did, however, leave a note saying, "People always call Fall Out Boy's lyrics nonsensical non sequiturs. I disagree, and I further think Fall Out Boy has perhaps the best lyricism in the game right now. Pete Wentz is the greatest lyricist of our generation, in my opinion." Ooh, some hot takes, I'm sure. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Fall Out Boy. Don't know much about them. Don't know much about Pete Wentz or the other band members. Um, but with that said, I think we can just go ahead and get into it. I'll read the normal thing like I always do, even though it's going to apply a little bit differently, seeing as this is, I don't know, an actual released song under a very recognizable name, but here we go. I am not a professional reviewer, I'm just some guy on the internet who likes reading and writing. The opinions expressed in this video are only opinions. My interpretation of or reaction to the work will not be the same as everyone else's, for better or for worse. I will look for the good and the bad, but no matter what I say, don't be too hard on yourself, just keep writing. And for those in the comments, please be respectful. Also, I'm so sorry for any mistakes or mispronunciations of names or words. If I come across a word that I don't want to say for whatever reason, I will replace it with the word blank. So, with that, I think we'll approach this the same we do as every poem. We'll just read the whole thing through and then kind of take it line by line. So, before we do, I mentioned I'm not a huge Fall Out Boy fan. I basically just know their hits and even not very many of their hits, to be honest. So, yeah, my standard of comparison here for this song against other Fall Out Boy songs is basically none. I basically don't have one. uh, I don't know, in terms of music, I kind of just stick to the '70s and '80s, a lot of yacht rock and classic rock and pop rock from that era. Um, so yeah, we'll see how that affects my reading of this. I also did wanna mention that seeing as this is a song, I don't quite measure it the same way I do actual poetry, and of course, song lyrics do count as poetry, but there's a lot more going on than just the lyrics, right? So yeah, I suppose I could say I give a lot more grace to songs to song lyrics because they're not attempting to do exactly the same thing that regular poetry does. So, with all that in mind, we'll just, take it away. The carpal tunnel of love. We take our sips from life's lush lips, and we shake, shake, shake the hips in relationships. Stomp out this disaster town. You'll put the eyes to the sun and say, I know you're only blinding to keep back what the clouds are hiding. And we might have started singing just a little soon. We're throwing stones at a glass moon. Whoa, whoa, we're so miserable and stunning. Whoa, whoa, love songs for the genuinely cunning. Whoa, whoa. We keep the beat with your blistered feet. We bullet the words at the mockingbirds singing, slept through the weekend and dreaming of sinking with the melody of the cliffs of eternity. Got postcards from my former selves saying, how you been? We might have said goodbye just a little soon, stomp out this disaster town, robbing lips, kissing banks under this moon. Whoa, whoa, we're so miserable and stunning. Whoa, whoa, love songs for the genuinely cunning. Whoa, whoa, we're so miserable and stunning. Whoa, whoa, love songs for the genuinely cunning. Whoa, whoa. It was ice cream headaches and sweet avalanche when the pearls in our shells got up to dance. You call me a bad tipper of the cradle, tired yawns for fawns on hunters' lawns. We're the has-beens of husbands, sharpening the knives of young wives. Take 2 years and call me when you're better. Take teardrops of mine, find yourself wetter. And then we have a repeated chorus, and I'm gonna spare you all of reading that one. So there's actually a lot of interesting, I don't know, pretty pleasant sounding stuff in here. So yeah, we'll just take it line by line. We take our sips from life's lush lips, and we shake, shake, shake the hips in relationships. So there's some fun internal rhyme in there. Sips, lips, hips, relationships. Um, the phrase itself, though, I feel like, and I don't know. you could say this about many, many song lyrics, but I feel like the more you look at it, um, the more you try to deconstruct it, the less sense it makes. We take sour sips from life's lush lips, like, as in you're drinking out of somebody else's mouth, right? Which, possible, kinky, but, yeah, kinda I don't know, kinda weird. Um, it does kind of feel like it's more just going for the rhyme than for sense, you know? Um, the other line makes a little bit more sense, and we shake, shake, shake the hips in relationships. Um, I don't know, there is probably kind of a sexual undertone going on here in a lot of ways, right? Shake the hips in relationships, that certainly, what's the word I'm looking for? Not really a double entendre, but it certainly is suggestive, that's the word I'm looking for. Um, so yeah, and I noticed on the first reading, there are some other instances where that, uh, suggestiveness kinda comes through as well, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for that as we keep going. Stomp out this disaster town, you'll put your eyes to the sun and say, I know you're only blinding to keep back what the clouds are hiding. So, some interesting stuff there too. Stomp out this disaster town, that's a repeated phrase that we'll see again, I think. You'll put your eyes to the sun and say, I know you're only blinding to keep back what the clouds are hiding. On my first reading, I kind of took that literally. You'll put your eyes to the sun, as in, like, you'll take out your eyes and put them on the sun. Obviously, that's not actually what's being communicated. Um, he's saying you'll stare at the sun, you'll look up at the sun, right? Um, which is fine. I I don't know. I think it's just funny that I misinterpreted it at first. I guess, most people wouldn't say it like that outside of something like a song, right? They would just say something like, "You'll look up at the sun, you'll gaze at the sun," whatever. And then, "I know you're only hiding." Sorry, "I know you're only blinding to keep back what the clouds are hiding." That's kind of, interesting. Um Yeah, that's a line that sort of communicates more than what it's actually saying. It sort of sparks in the listener this idea of like, "Oh, what are the clouds hiding? Interesting." Um, so yeah, I'm a fan of that. And we might have started singing just a little soon. We're throwing stones at a glass moon. That line's kind of interesting. It's a play, of course. The second one, it's a play on throwing stones at a glass house, right? Um, And we might have started singing just a little too soon. We're throwing stones at a glass moon. Not entirely sure what to make of those two lines put together. Maybe it's saying like, we kind of, because we're talking about a relationship here, presumably a relationship that was highly physical, right? So maybe it's saying like we jumped into this relationship too quickly, and now it's precarious, right? It's damaging even. Yeah, I guess that's my initial reading at least. That's what I think it seems to be suggesting. We're so miserable and stunning. Love songs for the genuinely cunning. That of course is going to be repeated again later. That's the chorus, right? We're so miserable and stunning is kind of, we can take that line on its face. And then the juxtaposition of miserable and stunning is kind of interesting. And, based on what we've kind of interpreted so far, it sounds like certainly would be an apt description of this relationship where it is stunning at times, but then also miserable in others. Um, and then love songs for the genuinely cunning. I'm not sure what to make of that, to be honest. Yeah, I'm trying to like rationalize it where yeah, I guess I just don't exactly know what the song means by genuinely cunning, right? Um, And are they saying, like, this song that's being sung is a love song for the genuinely cunning? I'm not sure. Maybe that line will take on more meaning as we keep going. We keep the beat with your blistered feet. We bullet the words at the mockingbirds singing. That could be an allusion to To Kill a Mockingbird, and then, of course, we keep the beat with your blistered feet. That again sort of evokes that idea of like, oh, they're having fun, right? Like she's dancing like crazy, but dancing so hard to the point that her feet are blistered, right? I don't know why I prescribed this subject as a she, sorry, could be anyone. Um, we bullet the words at the mockingbird singing. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like maybe the To Kill a Mockingbird illusion would actually be kind of apt too, where it's like both of these people are mockingbirds, much like, Boo Radley, right? But then when they come together, they harm each other, right? Um, and then we bullet the words. That's a pretty loaded word, I would say. Because on paper, it just sounds like they're singing really loudly at the mockingbirds, who are also singing. But then bullet kind of sort of something more violent, right? Yeah. Slept through the weekend and dreaming of sinking with the melody of cliffs of eternity, of the cliffs of eternity. That line I didn't love, at least those 5 words there, of the cliffs of eternity. I don't know, it sounded kind of trite almost, like anyone could write that, right? But I do rather like what else is there. Slept through the weekend and dreaming of sinking with the melody. So, slept through the weekend, that sort of to me, it sort of paints a picture of, like, a person who's depressed or unproductive, right? Which is fine, some weekends are absolutely meant for sleeping, but then we have dreaming of sinking with the melody. Dreaming of sinking, that, to me, has a much darker, reading, right? And then again, there's kind of this juxtaposition where dreaming sounds positive, whereas sinking, of course, simply doesn't. And so it kind of reminds me of miserable and stunning, right? Dreaming of sinking. It's like, it's a party, and yet we dream of the party ending, as it were, right? And then got postcards from my former selves saying, "How you been?" Yeah, that feels pretty clear, it's a nice metaphor, a nice, figurative way of saying, like, I'm looking back on my past and wondering, were things better for me in the past, that sort of thing. We might have said goodbyes just a little soon, stomp out this disaster town, robbing lips, kissing banks under this moon. Robbing lips and kissing banks is kind of fun because, of course, it's supposed to be kissing lips and robbing banks, and so it's sort of, beyond being just wordplay, it sort of demonstrates, like, a backwardsness. You could almost say, like, oh, the speaker is drunk or disoriented, right? Confused, maybe. And then stomp out this disaster town. To me, it sounds again, if my interpretation thus far has been correct, it kind of sounds like stomp out this disaster town is supposed to say like we're ending this relationship that we know is bad for us, right? And yet there's some melancholy there. We might have said goodbyes just a little too soon, right? As if maybe this relationship could have worked if we just kept going with it. What a common sentiment, right? Um, I think everyone is going to feel that way about certain relationships that they have, right? That, oh, maybe if we had just kept trying, maybe it would have worked out at that point, right? So that's a very relatable sentiment, right? And it's a contrast to and we might have started singing just a little too soon, which to me read as like, we jumped into this relationship too quickly. And now the sentiment is maybe we're jumping out of this relationship a little too quickly. So kind of a neat progression, I think. And then we have the chorus again. We're so miserable and stunning. Love songs for the genuinely cunning. Yeah, again, not entirely sure what P. Wentz means by the genuinely cunning. Um, yeah, I I like pretty much everything else so far, but the chorus does have me just slightly confused, so viewers, if you have thoughts on that, if you have thoughts on where that all fits into this, I would be interested to hear it. But let's move to our last, verse, or maybe the bridge, like I said, never heard this song before. It was ice cream headaches and sweet avalanche when the pearls in our shells got up to dance. So, ice cream headaches and sweet avalanche, another good example of all the juxtaposition we've been seeing so far. Ice cream is good, but they cause headaches, which are bad. Avalanches are bad, but these avalanches are sweet. And you could even say that that's just an extension of the ice cream headache, right? Because ice cream is like, akin to an avalanche in the sense that they're both frozen, and this avalanche is sweet, so maybe it is like ice cream, right? As for when the pearls in our shells got up to dance, I don't know, I guess you could say, like, pearls in our shells could be a metaphor for, like, the soul, the inside of, a person. You call me a bad tipper of the cradle, tired yawns for fawns on hunters' lawns. So, bad tipper of the cradle kinda sounds like a play on, robbing the cradle, right? But sort of the opposite where for some reason you're paying the cradle, right? All I can think is that maybe that alludes to sort of the age difference of the 2 people in this relationship. Um, Maybe the subject is younger than the speaker is, right? And, this is just some ribbing, like, you you robbed the cradle and then you left a really poor tip, right? And something like that, I don't know. And then tired yawns for fawns on hunters' lawns. Kinda neat internal rhyme for sure. Um, Tired yawns, though, that feels redundant. Um, and then for fawns on hunters' lawns, as if to say, like, we don't care about the deer that hunters have shot, or, these specific fawns on this specific hunter's lawns, yeah. Not really sure what to make of that other than, like, yeah, maybe it's like a desensitization toward violence or toward, harm in general. Which, if so, that's pretty good, actually. Um, but I do feel like it's more concerned with rhyming there than it is with anything else. We're the has-beens of husbands. Kind of a neat wordplay, has-beens, husbands. Um, Again, not entirely sure what to make of that on first reading. We're the has-beens of husbands, we're just bad ex-husbands, maybe, or we were good husbands at one point and now we're not, I guess, I don't know. Sharpening the knives of young wives. We're the has-beens of husbands, sharpening the knives of young wives. As in, you know, we were good husbands, but now we're just bad men who take young women and make them violent, maybe, make them worse versions of themselves, potentially. Take 2 years and call me when you're better. Take teardrops of mine, find yourself wetter. Yeah, so the word wetter there to me again felt kind of suggestive, but of course it's also in reference to take teardrops of mine, right? Um, and then this line, take 2 years and call me when you're better. That feels pretty clear, right? And again, it's sort of, to me, kind of further proves that this is a relationship that's coming to an end, right? And the speaker is saying, like, if we're both better in a couple of years, then maybe we can give this another try, right? And then, of course, take teardrops of mine and find yourself wetter. That is to say, I'm just as sad about this as you are, and so we can both cry over it, and you can even take my teardrops. Um, you could even phrase that, or you could even interpret that as like, I don't want to be sad about this, so would you please do the crying on my behalf, right? Which I kind of like that. I don't know. And then we have the chorus again. We're so miserable and stunning. Love songs for the genuinely cunning. Yeah, I don't think I have more to say about it at this point. But if my interpretation has been correct so far, I kind of like it. There are some lines in there where it's like, oh, okay, that's more here, for the musicality than it is for the lyrical meaning. I think that's the case with some of these lines anyway. But a lot of these lines I think are pretty good metaphors for a relationship that, is good in some aspects, but just isn't working in other aspects, that is harmful in other aspects. That is how I interpret it anyway. I don't know if Pete Wentz has ever done commentary about this song specifically. Um, but if that interpretation is correct, I don't know, I kinda like it. Like I said, I think there are some good metaphors in here, and overall, I think this is strong. I think it's probably even stronger with the music. Like I said, I hold it to a different standard than I would a poem, right? If this were a poem, I would probably suggest, like, more rigid structure as a way to challenge oneself. Like if Pete Wentz had given me this and he said, "Hey, this is a poem," I would say, "Oh, this is pretty good, but maybe try like, a more rigid meter and rhyme, just as a challenge for yourself and see what you come up with, when you do that." Um, but obviously that wasn't the intention, right? So as is, I think it's pretty neat. I'd be interested to hear everyone else's thoughts for sure. If there's something I missed, I would be glad to hear it. Just as final thoughts, I guess. Again, from sort of the suggestedness of a lot of these lyrics, I do interpret this as a relationship that was probably pretty great sexually, but then probably pretty damaging in a lot of other respects. But like, because that physicality was so great, um, they just couldn't pull themselves away, right? Yeah, they just kept staying and doing damage to one another. And it probably wasn't just the sex that was great, right? There were probably other good aspects about this relationship. And I think that does come through in some of the other lyrics. They probably had fun, but maybe a little too much fun, right? Maybe they enabled each other a little too much. So yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. This was fun. I always like, taking taking forms of literature that aren't, sort of the classic forms that we tend to think of. I always enjoy taking a look at these. So, Gyunsu, thank you again for submitting this. This was really fun to look at, genuinely. And maybe I'll have to go listen to the song now. For those of you who are familiar with the song, and even those of you who aren't, I would love to hear your thoughts. So, we'll end it there. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you again, Gyunsu, for submitting. And keep in mind, ultimately, this is a rough draft.